Welcome to the Broncos Podcast with Troy Renck. I am your host, Troy Renck from the Denver Post on a Sunday afternoon, gloomy Sunday afternoon. The Broncos stepped up in weight class against the Ravens and promptly got clobbered over the head, showing they're quite not ready for prime time. They're not ready to be a contender just yet. If you told them they'd be 5-4 after 9 games, I think they would have taken it. So let's not overreact to the embarrassing 41-10 loss, but it shows the ground they have to cover at this point. Because the Broncos, when they play better teams, especially teams not in the NFC South, you have to play almost a perfect game. You can't fumble. You can't throw an interception on the first pass. You can't miss a wide open touchdown pass. You can't fail to score in the red zone. And you can't not tackle guys like Devon Key. I'm looking at you. It just demands excellence, and you have to play a clean game. The other part this reveals is this team lacks offensive weapons, and we're going to get into that as well. But I don't think, as Broncos country, if you take a step back, take the 10,000-foot view here, 5-4 is about where you would hope they would be at this point. Still have a wonderful chance to reach the postseason because the AFC stinks. I mean, they have a chance to be the 7th seed. Clearly. And even if they were to lose next week to the Chiefs, you'd have a chance to go 5-2 the rest of the way when you look at the schedule. But the key thing is when you walk away from a game like this, what do you learn from it, both as a coaching staff and players, and how you can close that gap? And you probably can't close it from a talent perspective during the season, in absence of a big trade, which by all indications and talking to my sources, the Broncos are not looking to either acquire or send a player out. But you have to learn from it. You have to understand that to beat these better teams, you got to trick the game up a little bit. You got to play clean, and you have to find a way to win the takeaway battle. And today the Broncos lost in every category. As Sean Payton said afterward, they just whipped our butt, and they did. It was an entertaining game for the first half. Felt like the Broncos were in it until that Ravens last drive of the first half, and then they weren't. So Broncos embarrassed. What did we learn from it? What did we see from Bo Nix? There's an important narrative going into this. What did we see from Nix? What did we see from the number 3 ranked defense against the top offense? And what happened in that rush game defense at the end, especially in the third quarter? We're going to get to all of it after the break. Have you been hurt in a car wreck or injured at work? What are you waiting for? Call my friends at Hoggett Injury Law. Their motto, with us, it's personal. It's because it is. Listen, I've known Darby Hoggett for years. We used to travel around the country watching our boys play baseball. I coached his son, Jet, in hoops and baseball. Great kid. I got to know Darby. I became his good friend. Many of Darby's clients become his good friend. You don't even have to pay Darby up front. If your case goes as planned, Darby will be the one writing checks to you. So again, if you've been injured in a car wreck or hurt at work, give Darby's team a call. That's Darby at 1-833-HOGGATT. That's 1-833-HOGGET, or visit the website at hoggetlaw.com. BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action and the ability to watch the games as they happen. The largest selection of odds on everything from football, NBA, NHL to entertainment and even political props. Head to BetOnline today to get in on all the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. BetOnline, the game starts here. Well, the game started on a Sunday morning back here in Colorado, Sunday afternoon in Baltimore, and the Broncos, it was an interesting start. And by that, I mean disappointing. If you're going to go and upset the Ravens as a 9-point underdog, remember, this was the largest spread of the week, and that should always concern you. For whatever you think of the wise guys in Vegas, there's a reason they build casinos out there. And it's not because they are wrong a lot. They felt like Denver's schedule was soft. Denver wasn't ready to step up against a good team. And the Ravens were angry after losing to the Browns. Check. So the first possession, the Broncos lose the coin toss, or in this case, the Ravens win the coin toss. First possession of the game, Bo Nix's first pass, picked off. And remember, why is this such a big deal? Well, A, you're playing the Ravens. B, when the Broncos had won 3 straight road games, Bo Nix did not have a turnover and had not been sacked. Now, listen, I believe probably 60% of that goes on little Jordan Humphrey. It wasn't a great pass. It's got to hit him in the chest. It was a little high. It's not personal. It's never personal with this when I'm now analyzing this. Just little Jordan Humphrey's familiarity with the playbook has led Sean Payton to trust him in ways that lead to disproportionate playing time for a player that doesn't make plays. It's like if a fifth outfielder in baseball was hitting cleanup. You're not saying he doesn't deserve to be on the team, but he gets way too many snaps, way too many targets. Little Jordan Humphrey last week fumbled first possession. This week, he's part of an interception. Again, Bo Nix is not blameless in this. He's not. But little Jordan Humphrey, make a play for your guy. On the road, we don't reach up and volleyball set it up for the Ravens to get a pick. And the Broncos defense holds and they knock him, but it set a tone of the Broncos have got to play mistake-free football if they're going to win this game. So you give away a possession there. And then we get into early on, again, these are the things that all happen in the first half. And Bo Nix, to me, did meet the moment in a lot of ways. It wasn't perfect. And for those of you who said he didn't look like Lamar Jackson, folks, is on his way to winning a 3rd straight MVP award. Yeah, you're right. He's not Lamar Jackson, and he's not going to be Patrick Mahomes. But can he be Jalen Hurts? That's what I keep saying. Can he be that guy? Because you can win with that guy if you give him more weapons. And I know Big A was talking about that behind the board on his podcast after the game is, folks, if we're going to properly contextualize Bo Nix's development, in this game, he was QB1, RB1, and wide receiver 2. Like, where are the weapons beyond Courtland Sutton? Sutton's had 200-yard games, and that's good for him. He still, for me, profiles as a 2, a perfect 2, like a little bit miscast 2 because he could be a 1, but he's a perfect 2. Where's the Broncos' Zay Flowers? Where's the Broncos' Mark Andrews? Where's the Broncos' Isaiah Likely? Where's their Derrick Henry? Where is they just pick? They don't have it. That's why I'm saying you've got to have context when you evaluate Nix. If you'd say, oh, he's going to make everyone better. Today, in some ways, he did. You got to put some talent around him. But let's go back. While I could argue, and some will, that the Broncos lost this game when they ran 6 plays for -2 yards in the 3rd quarter, that's fair. That's fair. I'm going to tell you this game was lost in the first half. Bo Nix threw an interception on the first pass. Little Jordan Humphrey deserves at least equal blame. For me, probably 60%. Then Javonte Williams somehow ends up on a sweep on 4th and inches. I hate the call. I hated it in real time. This is not quarterbacking, Monday morning quarterbacking, hindsight. I hated it. Quarterback sneak there. Instead, 4th and inches, we do a sweep to Williams. If we're going to do a sweep, do it to Jaleel McLaughlin. That's his one strength. He doesn't break tackles. He's not a between the tackle guy. He can get outside and make somebody miss with a little shimmy. No, they go to Williams. He gets outside and somehow doesn't recognize where he's at on the field. All he needs to do as he goes to fall down is reach the ball at as if it were the goal line. Instead, he falls directly down. His knee touches about 2 inches short. Another boom off the field. So it's like a turnover. Then later in the first half, Nix, this is on him. They're on a 4th and 4. And to Sean Payton's credit on this, and again, he didn't have a great game as a coach, but he understands we're not winning a rock fight here, folks. We're not winning 20-17. You have to think in terms of scoring 27, 30 points. So he goes for it on 4th and 4. I think it was a 35-yard line. And a perfect play call. Troy Frank puts his DB on skates. He's wide open in the end zone. And Nix overthrows it. Those 3 right there, a pick, a turnover on downs, and then a misfire for a touchdown, change the complexion of the game. What happens then? You look at how that first half ended. The Broncos were at 17-10. They're in the game. And when they kicked that field goal, my oldest son, Dagan, and Dagan was watching it even more closely because I was writing something on Deadline, is, man, do they need to take some clock off here, force the Ravens to take some timeouts, because especially when it got to 3rd and long in that possession, maybe run it there, force their hand, because they get the ball back with 54 seconds left. But typically you'd say, who cares? With the Ravens, that's a big deal. It's a big deal. So they get the ball back. Denver's down 17-10. You go into half down 17-10, you can almost feel good about yourself because, like, man, we made mistakes. We've given away 3 possessions that we didn't score on, and we're still in it. Well, instead, what happens? You're controlling Jackson on the ground. You're controlling Derrick Henry on the ground. And then all of a sudden, Zay Flowers blooms. Flowers ends up in the first half, 4 catches, 111 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He had never had 2 touchdowns in a single game, folks. And he had 2 in the first half. But his one catch changed the game. They're driving down, about 25 seconds left when he takes the snap. Jackson connects with Flowers over the middle with 16 seconds remaining. We caught the ball. It ends up when he scores totally with 16 seconds remaining. So he catches the ball with about 25 seconds. In the middle of the field, Devon Key, I don't know what he was doing. I mean, he arm tackled in a way that would make Shiloh Sanders blush. Totally whiffs on him. Flowers gets to the edge, and then he's untouched. PJ Locke, can you get well soon? The broken finger. They miss him. He had a bad game. He's not the reason they gave up 41 points, but that was such a critical moment where Flowers catches a ball. It puts him in field goal range, but they're going to have to try to throw it to the end zone. It's easier to defend the end zone when you're getting closer. So you keep them to a field goal. 20-10 still stinks, but it's way different than 24-10. 24-10 felt like it was over, and it was. The Broncos got shut out in the second half. But a 53-yard score to Zay Flowers. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? And that's what made it 24-10. And the Broncos are just not equipped to come back in a game like that. So, Bo Nix ends up with, I think it was 200. I'm going to double check my math here. I want to make sure I have it for you. 265, I think it was, total yards of total offense. He was the Broncos, again, best player on the field, I thought. 19-33, 223 yards, 1 pick. He rushed 6 times for 36 yards. He also had a touchdown catch on a throw from Courtland Sutton where he had to go up and make a play, folks. It's like a 50-50 ball practically, and he goes up and makes a play and turns his body to fall in the end zone. So I'm joking, only half joking, that he's their wide receiver too. Sutton, just so you understand, he's 4 for 4 now for 84 yards as a passer, never thrown an incompletion. That wasn't one of his better passes. He underthrew it, but he put it in position for Nix to make a play. And God, I wish some of the receivers would watch that and say, he made a play for Sutton. Maybe I should make a play for my quarterback. Because other than Sutton, who's doing that? Who's doing that? When you look at their catch, 7 for 122 for Sutton. The next guy was Javonte Williams, 2 for 42. And one of that was on 34 yards in the middle of the field. Franklin, 1 for 19. Lil Jordan Humphrey, 5 targets for 11 yards, 2 catches. Give me a break. Vele, 2 for 11. McLaughlin, 3 for 10. Troutman, 1 for 4. Mims, 1 for 4. Then Kroll, 0. So you got out of the tight end position where the Ravens were second worst in targets and receptions and yards against this year. You get out of Troutman 1 catch for 4 yards. Out of the running back position, 12 carries, 42 yards from Javonte. I mean, folks, it's not good enough. I mean, if you want to blame Nix, have at it. I just think that's misguided. Nix played well enough. He made a stand. He stood up to the moment. He looked like one of the best athletes on the field. He's not Lamar Jackson. We get it. But I'm telling you, you can win with him like this if you get the weapons around him. And I bring up Jalen Hurts because they're more similar in so many ways. But Hurts has A.J. Brown. He's got Devontae Smith. He's got Goddard at tight end. He's got Saquon Barkley. So he has a margin for error. They've got to get Nix 2 more weapons. He needs a wide receiver 1, and he needs a tight end. He absolutely needs 2 of those things. And why did he need 2 of those things? Well, the defense had a bad day, folks. Vance Joseph's been brilliant this season outside of the third quarter against Seattle. Today was not his strength. They could not find a sweet spot. He's typically blitzing, but he's trying to kind of just get guys up the field to keep Jackson in the pocket. Because when you blitz Jackson and you get him outside the pocket, it's a disaster. And they could not find the sweet spot with that. They weren't getting to him. Even when they beat their man Cooper and Browning and Ellis, they're beating, and Benito did have one big tackle for a loss on a run play, not a sack, so his sack streak ends. But when you can't get to him and bring him down, once Lamar Jackson extends the play, you're dead. Because he's either going to beat you with your legs or he keeps the play extended for 5-6 seconds. You just can't cover that long. I mean, just can't. And we saw that repeatedly as Lamar Jackson finished the fourth game of his career with a perfect passer rating. Absolutely just riddled the Broncos. He finishes the day 16 of 19, 280 yards. So he's right at 18 yards of completion. Is that good? The Broncos were giving up through three quarters 8.5 yards per play. Coming into the game, they were at 4.3 yards per play. So double the yards per play than they'd been giving up all season. And then Jackson, again, the play to Zay Flowers was absolutely a killer. But the game got lost when it was 17-10. Then over the course of like 2-3 drives, it was 38-10. And they scored right before the half to make it 24-10. They get the ball coming out of the half and go up 31-10. And then they get the ball right back 38-10. Because the Broncos, for all their offensive progress, still rank near the bottom in 3 and outs. And so that third quarter, when they have -2 yards on 6 plays, that is the exact time the Ravens put the foot down on the pedal and absolutely throttled the Broncos. Because they were in it, in theory, at 17-10. And then it was just an absolute onslaught that they could not control. Because it's crazy. The Broncos at halftime had 229 yards of offense. And you take that, they finished with 319. Broncos were a non-factor in the second half. Non-factor in the second half. And it was an embarrassing display defensively. Vance Joseph could not find his way. And really, it was Flowers really that destroyed them. He had 5 catches for 127 yards. Hill, the backup running back, 3 for 43. Aguilar, 1 for 29. Henry, 1 for 27. Andrews, 2 for 26. Bateman, 2 for 25. I mean, it's not like 3 guys hurt him. Zay Flowers, 1 guy hurt him. And I got to go back and watch the film, too, to see how much they would have followed him in that game with Surtain. But the biggest play was the 53-yarder, and Key just absolutely missed the tackle. But Lamar Jackson, folks, he hasn't done what he needs to do in the playoffs to be an all-time great. That's what's missing on his resume. They get away from the run in the playoffs, but this year more than ever, it looks like Lamar Jackson could beat you with his arm in the playoffs. Can he do that? He's got to prove it. But against one of the better defenses, he absolutely riddled the Broncos. No excuses. No excuses. The Broncos got their butt kicked. They had chances to stay in the game, and they couldn't. They had chances to make plays, and they couldn't. And when Lamar Jackson is having that kind of game, then ultimately it's going to wear you down. And that's where this one finished up, folks. Derrick Henry, I remember going way back to tell a story here. I was at the Combine where Derrick Henry was at the Combine. And that was the year he won the Heisman, and I really thought Christian McCaffrey should have won it. McCaffrey didn't get helped by the fact his games at Stanford were on really late at night, and most of the East Coast was asleep. Derrick Henry's out there with Alabama getting 40 carries for 180 yards, for a great Alabama team. So I get it, but I still think McCaffrey should have won the Heisman that year. Then I stood by Derrick Henry at the Combine. Derrick Henry is the size of Von Miller as a running back. 6'3", 245, 250. You just cannot believe a guy that big, that strong, can run that fast. You just can't. It's hard to fathom. Now, if he doesn't get ahead of steam going, you can stop him. And the Broncos did early. He had 32 yards rushing in the first half. That was the one thing the Broncos accomplished. Lamar Jackson had 4 yards rushing today. And Henry had 32 yards at half. So in theory, it's working up until the Zay Flowers touchdown. The breakdown, and there was more of a breakdown in tackling than a breakdown in coverage. But then the Ravens absolutely just gave you a heavy dose of a Mack truck. They get the ball. That's why that Zay Flowers touchdown was so critical. Is they score to make it 24-10, and then the Ravens get the ball to start the second half. And that is when Derrick Henry absolutely showed why he might be second in the MVP race to Lamar Jackson. On that drive that makes it 31-10, and the game was over at that point. It was likely over at 24-10, but it was certainly over at 31-10. On that drive, it's 11-play, 70-yard drive. Takes up 5:24 up the clock. Derrick Henry on that drive, 7 carries, 43 yards. So he went from having this modest day, 32 yards, not really a factor. Now you look up, he's got 75 yards. And they keep him in, and he ends up with 106. But he absolutely was a load on that drive. Had a 12-yard run, had a 20-yard run, had a touchdown. He's now got a touchdown. Look up this stat because it's just crazy. One of these stats with Henry, and he's a Hall of Famer in case you're wondering. But Henry reached 10 touchdowns in 7 straight seasons. Obviously, his first 6 were with the Titans. That's tied for the second longest streak with Adrian Peterson. And the leader in that is 9 straight seasons with at least 10 touchdowns with LaDainian Tomlinson, a Hall of Famer. Adrian Peterson will be a Hall of Famer. Henry just absolutely put his foot down on the Broncos. And that hadn't happened to them since the third quarter against Seattle in the opener with Kenneth Walker. There were shades of that. The Walker one's a little more disappointing because Geno Smith's obviously not Lamar Jackson. And when you're trying to account for Jackson and doing things to account for Jackson, it does leave you vulnerable in defending Derrick Henry. But again, Henry took over on that drive, has 43 yards alone on that drive, and absolutely just puts the game away. It's 31-10. And then you just look at the second half, and the Broncos offense just disappeared. But when you take, again, you widen the lens here. The reaction to it I thought was appropriate. Nobody is trying to make excuses from Sean Payton saying, hey, we got to hand it to us. Bo Nix, we got our butt kicked. Every player in the locker room, when you see their interviews, it was just like, hey, we got smashed. And now the Broncos have to deal, with the humiliation of they're a fake ID team. Nationally now, because that game's on CBS, with Jim Nantz, Tony Romo in the big window, the biggest audience for CBS, you absolutely get your ears boxed. So you have to hear the criticism that you're a fake ID team. You got 5 wins against teams that had 11 wins coming into the game. You have to wear that because when you stepped up in weight class, you got punched in the throat and you barely counterpunched. That was in the first half, and you got smoked by 31 points. If they'd just been competitive in the second half, I think it's easier. Say they lose 34-22, but they're in it. You go for it on 4th down late, and that ends up being a pick six, whatever. Truth is, you got smashed, and now the national narrative is, wow, when they don't play the NFC South or a washed-up Aaron Rodgers, they're not very good. So they have to deal with that. I would counter with at 5-4 in a rebuilding season, this is still encouraging where they're at overall. Not today. Today's not. But overall at 5-4, I think most in Broncos country, if they're being realistic, would have taken that. But now you go to the Chiefs. The Chiefs, I'm not saying you can win a rock fight, but you have a much better chance to win a lower scoring game. Can you beat them 23-20? That's your chance. The Ravens, watching them again, and I've seen, I think, 4 of their games now, 5. You've got to think in terms of scoring like 30 points to beat them. And you've got to have an offense that can exploit their weakness, which is their secondary. And that's what came up time and time again, especially in the second half, is Broncos don't have receivers who can get open consistently, and they don't even have a tight end that's in the pass game. Are we really going to allow one Adam Troutman one-hand play and a Nate Atkins touchdown to say they're fine at tight end? I just think it's a disservice if they don't get a tight end. I wish they would go out and get David Njoku at the deadline on Tuesday. I think that gives you a much better weapon in the intermediate, in the middle of the field that they absolutely need. And Njoku's young enough. He's under contract for next year. He's making no money this year because of a restructured deal. If they want Baron Browning or if they want Greg Dulcich in the deal and a draft pick, who says no? I don't. But if you wait till the offseason, then you're going to have days like this where you don't have enough offensive weapons. You don't have enough offensive firepower. That's what I hope the message it sent the front office and sent Sean Payton You might love Adam Troutman. You might love Mike Burton. You might love Nate Atkins. You might love little Jordan Humphrey. They're not good enough. They're not good enough. They, to me, are like the Nuggets bench. Guys you like, guys that have potential. But when you look at the collective and the aggregate, it's just not good enough. And if you want to develop Bo Nix and you want to paint a picture for Bo Nix, you got to get him better players around him. And I would start with getting him a tight end. If Kyle Pitts were available, I'd send Baron Browning and a pick to Atlanta for Kyle Pitts. Who says no to that? I just don't think they're going to make a move. There's not a lot of incentive to. I know they like their guys, but as you look ahead, there's going to be some games here that are greasy. Even if you lose the Chiefs, you've still got some greasy games coming up. Against Indianapolis, Chiefs later in the season. Cleveland's playing better. Like, those are games where you need that extra offensive weapon. That's why we'll say it, and we'll have the podcast again on Friday too, after the deadline. But for me, I want to get this out there now. I go get a tight end for the kid, and I go out and get David Njoku if he's available. If he's not, he's not. But I'd go out and get him. And if you want to say you're going to wait till the draft, okay. But I would then try to go get T. Higgins in free agency as a one, and then I would go get a tight end, Tyler Warren or the kid Loveland from Michigan. I've got to get a tight end in the draft because it's just not good enough, folks. It's never personal, never personal. It's just when you look at what Bo is operating with, he's not that guy. He's not going to make chicken salad out of chicken and you know what every week. So I was still encouraged by what I saw from Bo Nix. And that is the one thing that, not the one takeaway. The takeaway is they got their ass kicked. But you can get your ass kicked and still walk away at the most important position and say, you know what? The Broncos still have their guy. Bo didn't melt down. Bo, for me, was the best player on the field. That is encouraging. That is what John Elway was at times early in his career, where the Broncos weren't where you want them to be, but you saw their quarterback and said, man, they ever get the right combination here, a running back, they ever get the right pieces, this team's going to be really good. And Bo's not John Elway, but the point is, he's not the problem right now. He's part of the solution. So that is a good place to be. But now, can he learn from this? Because now you go to Kansas City, one of the hardest places in the league to play, and Spagnuolo with his defense is an absolute nightmare on young quarterbacks. Just like Lamar is on rookies, Lamar Jackson is now 9-0 in his career against rookie quarterbacks. Spagnuolo just absolutely flosses his teeth with rookie quarterbacks. Can't Sean Payton dial it up? Keep this team in the game, run and play. This is the game where you look to play keep away. You try to get ahead and you try to play keep away. Keep the ball from Patrick Mahomes and try to win a lower scoring game. Because if the Broncos don't learn from this and they lose 31-7 to the Chiefs, then it's time to say, you know what? They're not a playoff team. They're way further back than we thought. And even though Nix is showing improvement, they're just not ready. And that may end up being where we're at. But I'm not ready to say that. I'm ready to say they should have a real chance to compete and pull off an upset, even if they don't. And then at 5-5, put yourself in position to make a run. But they got to start looking in the mirror about some of these guys that are getting reps offensively with Troutman, Atkins, with Lil Jordan Humphrey. You got to start making some decisions here on what is your best group going forward. Because Sean Payton's never been sentimental. And at times it feels like with this offense and this personnel, he's getting a little sentimental. Folks, I hope you enjoyed it. I know this wasn't your favorite day. This is not what Broncos country wanted. But you can take away that your quarterback met the moment in terms. He didn't flinch. He was one of the best players on the field. Courtland Sutton has another 100-yard game. The defense, for all intents and purposes, should bounce back. They'll never face a better offense this year than Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry group. But they got to go prove it. Can they handle adversity? They haven't handled prosperity. Great. Can they handle adversity? Because you just got a heavy spoonful of it. And now you have your next toughest game of the year at Kansas City. So here we go. I could not do this pod without my great friends at Mile High Sports, Nate Lundy, Big A behind the screen producing it. We've got Bet Online, the new sponsor, thanks to them. And, of course, my guy, Darby Hoggett, who's been there from A1, from day one. Broncos country, I do this pod for you. Happiness that begins with me. Go out there and have a great day.